Hi, I wrote this note today, and I think it is very important information, and so I'm sharing it. And I've said before, you know, I do read out some of my Facebook notes to put them onto YouTube, specifically with blind people or partially sighted people in mind who cannot read what is written in a Facebook note. And also some people are dyslexic, and some people just find it easier to actually have somebody speaking, you know, what's been written down. And because this is so important, I wrote this Facebook note, and it was in direct connection to this cover for the National Geographic. This is their latest cover, Gender Revolution, and this little boy who was born male has chosen to wear girly clothes and dye his hair pink, and apparently he's been described as a transgender. Now, the information that I'm going to share here basically exposes the fact that National Geographic and the media in general are actually, perhaps unwittingly, because, you know, so many people are a victim of this, endorsing child abuse, you see, because they're operating on total ignorance of what a human being is and what a child is. Okay, so I hope that by the time I've completed reading this, that people will understand the veracity of my concerns here and why this issue is so confusing. And I hope to iron out all those confusions and basically deliver clarity to the whole issue. Okay, so I'm just going to go through this note that I've titled The Rise of the Transgender Child, and, you know, with the picture of a pile of pink clothes and a picture of a pile of blue clothes. In recent years, the developed world has witnessed the steady rise of the transgender child, and parents encouraged to make plans for hormone therapy so the child does not experience the physical changes associated with puberty. It would appear there's even pharmaceutical profits to be made from the advent of transgender children who, unlike the days of old, are now socially celebrated and given major publicity. For how many decades have girl children chosen to wear boys-style clothing and play with boys' toys, etc.? Did the tomboy ever make the cover of National Geographic? Does wearing girly clothes truly mean the boy child is transgender? One of my nieces has been a tomboy from childhood and regularly played football to the point of becoming professional in adulthood. Strangely, National Geographic nor CNN, etc. were interested in her. Furthermore, she's not grown up to be homosexual, and if she had, that would really have nothing to do with her being a tomboy from childhood. Being a tomboy did not render her transgender. My own son, aged 2, requested a Barbie and a brown doll. He also requested toy guns. He now has the photo of himself sat feeding his brown doll with his plastic rifle lent up beside him. He explained he needed it to protect his baby. Similarly, his He-Man figures were engaged to protect Barbie. His dad, an Iranian, expressed concern that by satisfying our son's request I was encouraging him to grow up gay. Somehow, being eldest of 6 children who all played with each other's toys, I knew it would have caused actual damage to deny our child his request purely by reason of his gender. And thankfully his dad accepted the risks associated with deprivation imposed through gender discrimination. And, you know, that is an important point, that to say to a child who has felt attracted to something, and to say to that child, no, you can't have that because you're a boy, is to give them then, is to actually impose a sense of deprivation on that child, that that child is now deprived of something simply because he's a boy, you know, or the same to do it to a girl. So, and that is psychological damage of a child, because children aren't coming from the same place that adults are coming from. Children are not yet sexual beings, are they? Their gender, they have a gender, but their sexuality has not yet fully developed. So, you know, the child doesn't understand that, oh no, these toys are made specifically for girls, you see. As it was, my husband's concerns were proven false. Our son is heterosexual. I always knew our son would be one or the other, and with chances of being homosexual presenting the lesser likelihood. Whichever he found himself to be, I would continue to love him all the same. You know, because the fact is, the majority of boys and girls grow up to be heterosexual, don't they? While I understood by the time of my early 20s that the gender-specific toys themselves reflect a harmful division within the child's psychology, it was beyond my power to change the world he was born into. The most I could achieve was damage limitation. He still had absorbed by the age of 3 the fact that ladies have handbags and lipsticks and mans have guns and controls. Sexuality is something a child connects with after puberty. The majority of tomboys grow up into heterosexual women. Why should it be any different for Tamgirls? Which is, you know, the name that I've created really now for such boy children who, like some girl children, you know, they want to dress up as girls and play with girls' toys, just as some girls, you know, well, they're called tomboys, so, you know, Tamgirl. The point being that physical sexual intimacy and sexual attraction are a very long way from, e.g., a child's desire to dye their hair pink and play with a dollhouse. And, you know, that is such an important point. And I think that highlights exactly what is going on here. You know, the damage really that's being done. And how this child, which I know it sounds horrible to say it, but how this child has literally been vamped on by an adult world that wants to prove a point, or wants to what? Promote an agenda? Who knows what is going on? Anyway, getting back on to the rest of the article. It isn't a very long article. An externally designed consciousness promoted by very powerful media has a heavy impact on the delicate, easily impressed and therefore extremely vulnerable child psychology. The hand that rocks the cradle rocks the world is no idle observation. A child is a developing psychology and not just a growing physical body, apparently created for purpose of sustaining manufactured consumer products which are mostly designed by unimaginative, intergenerational parrots regurgitating what they've been fed to feed the latest generation as wholesome food. Disturbingly, there is a direct analogy here with the terrible and actually despicable plight of the albatross. As a direct result of humans feeding the child psychology with plastic-created gender constructs, so albatross parents are feeding their young with the physical reality of our plastic world consciousness and all the antiquated myths and false needs they materialise to satisfy in the starving child psychology. And you know, this is one of the most horrific impacts of so-called humanity on the life of our planet, because the albatross has evolved over millions of years to understand that everything that floats on the sea is edible. And then suddenly along comes humanity, so-called, with its plastic creations, and it's all floating on the sea. The albatross just pick it up, feed it to their young, they die, and this is the result, you know, and it's a very serious problem. Now, As I've explained here, the image below depicts an accurate translation of exactly what it is we are feeding our children's minds with. And that really is, as you give, so shall you receive, people. Jesus was not lying. And I tell you now, this is the state of our children's psychology in the Western world. In the so-called developed world, this is the state of our children's mind. Exactly that picture. Okay? And the very fact that the so-called humans of this world have seen this picture, I've been sharing it for years. I was heartbroken. I was heartbroken when I saw these pictures of what's happening. And yet people are. You know, they'll go, oh, isn't it sad? And then they just completely forget it because they have that capacity, because it's a throwaway world with throwaway emotions, throwaway thoughts. Everything's in the here and now, you know. It is noticeable that children who are given mostly educational toys according to their natural interests grow up to specialise in specific fields of study, i.e. astronomy, for example. And that's true, some children have a natural interest from their childhood, a natural vocation, and they have parents that connect with that and provide, and they carry it on through right into adulthood. The media and the parents whose attention they attract are playing a dangerous game. Clothing, toys and hair dye are not an expression of sexuality. According to my lived experience, most gay men I've met do not wear feminine clothes and do not want to wear them either. Most gay women I've met wear very feminine clothes. Some males secretly like to wear women's clothing, but they're not all gay. Often, the attraction to women's clothes for certain males is simply a desire to taste forbidden fruit. Very likely, the real issue of cross-dressing is entirely rooted in the stark difference between male and female clothing, and also the fact that from childhood, people are raised in a false normality, which sexualises women's attire. It's when we connect with a child's true needs, we begin to fully comprehend the damage and the resulting fallout. Unlike the albatross who suffer the physical death of their plastic-fed offspring, the human child psychology simply starts within, which in turn facilitates the overdevelopment of the ego and the resulting generations of superficial humans who are largely never as they appear according to the surface personas they project and attract. So you're dealing with we are raising a very shallow level of consciousness. Bereft of acceptance from childhood and growing up in a world that fails to provide for the human child's true needs, the subsequently inflated ego, feeding like a dead star from an active one, constantly craves attention and praise. The easiest way to achieve those are through assimilating with the manufactured programs that get stamped on a child's consciousness. Those programs are inherently designed to either feed or starve egos, depending on the social background, ethnicity, faith, etc. Is there a hijab Barbie or an ISIS Ken? The very thought appears ridiculous, and yet Barbie and Ken are every bit as ridiculous when we realise the terrible truth that both are projecting an equally antiquated and actually psychopathic psychosexuality onto our children. Girls especially are heavily pressured into looking sexy, and the prevailing social judgments on every aspect of the female sex are predominantly harsh. So harsh that many boys are raised to nurture a seemingly inbuilt aversion to anything remotely girly. Is it any surprise that heterosexual males are by far responsible for a steady stream of violent attacks against women and homosexuals? You know, is it a surprise when we're actually raising our boys to understand that anything girly is actually beneath them? And so, you know, is it any surprise to see that translated as hate and violence against females and homosexuals? It's no wonder so many teenage girls fall victim to severe eating disorders, The anorexic female teenager is symptomatic of an inner psychological starvation, which again most harshly deprives the girl child of her human rights to unconditional positive regard. Traditionally, menstruation was judged as a curse, and the echoes of that judgment commonly prevail today, fostering covert embarrassment and shame around a vital human function without which there could not be one human being alive today. Perhaps it is time parents recognised the cognitive damage and started demanding unisex, practical clothing and unisex toys. Adults need to accept that present gender constructs were established in elitist history and they continue to covertly attack our children. Why do we have girls' clothes and boys' clothes in the first place? It's antiquated nonsense. Children just need clothes. An adult female will always be recognised as a female, as will an adult male. Adult bodies and physical needs require different designs of clothing, whereas the difference between girl and boy children's clothing might be, i.e., a front trouser zip. Barbie, an elitist male estimation of the perfect woman, and Ken, the elitist male estimation of the perfect man for Barbie. Okay? It is precisely those same elites who to this very day fundamentally depend on the next generation of intellectual parrots to willingly submit to the divisions of the elitists need and rely on for their maintaining their wealth and power from one generation to the next. Indeed, their whole antiquated education system is designed to single out the most proficient parrots, and it really is. And now we've got scientific evidence of that, okay? As usual, what is revered as intelligence among the various gender construct is in reality now known to be actually unintelligent. The latest research goes a long way toward exposing exactly how and why humanity has come to be governed by largely stupid and easily corrupted or coerced professionals. And here I've shared an extract from an article of the Science Alert, which I'll leave the link to it under this, which basically says, according to the two researchers from the University of Toronto in Canada, memory isn't intended to help transmit the most accurate information, but rather the most useful information that can help make us make smart decisions in the future. It's important that the brain forgets irrelevant details and instead focuses on the stuff that's going to help make decisions in the real world, explains one of the researchers, Blake Richards. So basically, the parrots who accurately memorise and score the highest marks in exams are actually the least intelligent people. Okay? They're the least intelligent people. So, of course, they're the ones that have been sailing through the academia, and they're the ones now governing and controlling almost every aspect of our lives. And they are stupid. Okay? They've been measured by stupid people according to their stupid, ignorant criteria. Maybe it's time, I mean, I'm not saying all professionals are stupid, because obviously, you know, there's a mix of everybody in there, but by majority they are very ignorant people, because otherwise things just could not be in this world as they are if the professional people weren't by majority ignorant. So, you know, maybe it's time for 21st century parents to forget Barbie and Ken, you know, the gender construct role models. Now we recognise their true absurdity and accept that both have inflicted severe damage on male and female consciousness, in the sense they promote and project onto children unrealistic icons supporting the Romanesque gender constructs. To fully comprehend the significance, how does Boudica fit in with the concept of Barbie? Is the concept of day and night Ken anywhere close to representing, e.g., Gandhi? Plastic dolls and the commercial crap sold as girl stuff or boy stuff are very far removed from our human realities of being. Those antiquated icons are subliminally translated as our children's social judges who offer discrimination or favour depending on how closely any given child matches up to their measure. Clearly, children are being distracted from by the idea of choice, and parents covertly persuaded to focus attention and meaning on a child's choice as to which plastic icons of consciousness they prefer. Since when was liking brightly coloured pretty clothings and items exclusive to being either male or female? If there were no such thing as girls' or boys' toys, games and clothing, would the transgender child be on National Geographic front cover? According to the gender construct judgments by today's standards, all of these native tribesmen depicted below are gay, because they dress not much differently from the women, and yet they're all easily recognised as male. I mean, and look at these African tribesmen. They look absolutely fantastic. You can tell the males, but, you know, they've got flowers in the hair, feathers, lovely bright bonnets. They're actually wearing bonnets. They've got long plaited hair, lots of beads and shiny, bright colours around their neck. And, you know, wow, I mean, just look at this guy, absolutely amazing. Covered, his whole body covered in the most beautiful artwork paint, arms decorated, amazing feather headdress, you know, absolutely. And this guy, I absolutely love him. I mean, look, the feathers, he's got feathers, flowers, his face is painted yellow with a white strip and red dots down his nose. He's got these lovely bamboo woven, well, it looks like bamboo or grass woven arm bands right at the top of his arms there. You know, absolutely fantastic. Well, in our society he would be gay, wouldn't he, you know? And this, well, he isn't gay, but he'd be judged, wouldn't he? And this lady, here she is with her beautiful baby here, and you know, she's dressed in very similar colours, and you know, has these amazing earrings on and this beautiful beadwork. So, you know, according to Western criteria, these men all look gay, you know. These men all look gay. She's butch. She's most unladylike. But, you know, this was our natural human state before we got before Britain got invaded by Rome and forced, you know, to adopt the very strict Roman gender construct, which actually were, in most of Europe, unique to Rome. Unique, because most cultures, you know, women were warriors, and, you know, men might do what today is considered women's work. So, you know, this is, I think, a prime example of exactly how twisted and messed up these gender constructs have become. It appears without the elitist imposed gender construct, male humans commonly wear brightly coloured feathers and flowers and makeup. Such human preferences in those native communities are not restricted to any specific gender group, and we need to lose the notion that they are. And that's the whole point that I'm making. You know, the fact that these men want to wear bright colours and feathers has got nothing to do with whether or not they're male or female. It's their right. So it's only strange for a male to wear makeup and brightly coloured clothing in a world which has consistently promoted the drab-coloured business suit and tie, and women encouraged to dress in ways that enhance their feminine shape and beauty. Imagine if men were to do the same by wearing penis-enhancing clothes. Well, actually they did, along with frilly shirts and embroidered coats. Voila, le code piece. And I think this is a fantastic photograph because it shows the example perfectly well. I mean, people would think this is rude today, but this is how men dressed. They displayed their manhood in very a similar way that today women display their breasts. And, you know, look, they're wearing... King Henry VIII there, he's wearing a dress with pearls and things hanging off it. He's got a big, thick, richly embroidered coat with his frilly sleeves and collar, and his highly embroidered velvet hat, and you know, and there he is with his stockings and slippers on. So, you know, and this was in history, you know, this was like hundreds of years ago. Noticeably, African men and women commonly opt for brightly coloured clothing, and most Middle Eastern males wearing the equivalent of long dresses. The Scots wore skirts, and the Asian suit is similar in design for both male and female. And I don't know if you've seen, you know, the Muslim Pakistani clothes that they wear. It consists of a tunic and very baggy trousers, and it is a very similar design and pattern for both males and females. It's just that the women tend to go for, you know, the more brightly coloured clothing. We all need to get real, because while ever the elitist imposed fantasies are being printed on our children, the life of our planet is suffering in every which way possible. An unrealistic world is a lawless world full of confusion and crime. The human child deserves more. Well, deserves and needs better. It's high time we started to live by what we know, instead of what the educated parrots are telling us we should all believe. Because we need to live by what we know, okay? But we're still living largely by what the people of antiquity believed. What they believed. We're still living by those antiquated gender constructs that were imposed upon us, largely by Rome, which actually was a crazy mad consciousness built according, you know, its social orders mirrored a wolf pack, and, you know, they had these very strict gender divisions between male and female. So, you know, a man had to have a heart of stone and a woman had to be this wishy-washy thing, and, you know, she wasn't allowed to do certain things, and she actually had no power and no rights. Finally, if humanity is ever going to make any real progress towards liberating our children from the traditional antiquated nonsense presently vamping off our life reality and presence on this planet, we do need to insist that our governing authorities immediately abandon their legal definition of a child as a minor stroke unimportant human being. That is a very, very important point. We need to get this term minor removed from our children. Now, if you're a parent and you think your child is an unimportant human being, then you've got no right being a parent. You're a very messed up parent. And if you can tolerate living in a world that the authorities governing you and your child have judged your child a minor, an unimportant human being, then you need to raise issue with them authorities and get that disgusting legal definition removed from our child. Because I tell you now, that definition is key to denying children's rights to justice, okay? Because legally, crimes against children are a minor concern. We need to accept the child is a VIP and not a garbage bin brain created to swallow the latest profitable and popular regurgitated rubbish about who we are and why we're here. We're here to care for our planet and ourselves. When we learn how to feed the child's psychology with reality and up-to-date knowledge, that's when our planet will no longer get trashed. And therein lies the crux of the matter. Real human beings could not bear to tolerate the daily horrors that present-day developed nations casually ignore with help of a few pills and powders and all the distractions of a consumerist heaven. The downside is hell. A real heaven provides stability and security of humane law, which in turn effectively prohibits the creation of hell and all of the dilemmas and confusion it dumps on the child conscious and psychological development. And it's true, because for every person in this world that's living in heaven, there's what, 1,000 people condemned to the poverty of hell, isn't it? In light of the lessons of history, it's hardly a surprise to witness current media attention on the transgender boys as proof that liking girls' clothing is part of their naturally being gay. The media propaganda is feeding directly off the child consciousness now and imposing very shoddy interpretations and a media spotlight acclaim on what is promoted as 21st century social progress, and which in fact is symptomatic of a psychosexual disease that we need to cure. The fact is, homosexuality will always be present in every society and culture. It is nothing new. It's time humanity accepted the truth that anomalies are a natural feature of life on this planet. As long as they're not hurting anyone and are upholding the law, who has any right to judge? Who has a right to judge a boy child, transgender, just because he chooses to wear the pretty clothes and colours designed specifically for girls? The child, being sexually undeveloped, is more accurately, a cross-dresser. And the adult world needs to accept that all such cross-dressing is itself yet another symptom of this crazy upside-down world which continues to insist that pink and flowers for boys is sissy and that girls must be raised to be sissy as their gender construct writes. Seriously, get real. Children need some compassionate sense and sanity. Please. And so does our planet. The only thing that makes this guy here appear to some as ridiculous is 1,000+ years of elitist judgments. It's time we laid those judgments to rest and allowed our children to express their natural humanity as man equals both male and female. And here's a picture of this black guy wearing what many would describe as a loose-fitting dress and jacket, and he's got quite a thick chain with some things attached to it, a silver looking chain round his neck, quite a large rimmed black hat, and he's wearing some coloured boots, like, well, I suppose they're sort of a maroon coloured boots. But, you know, looking at him, a lot of people would just laugh, oh, he looks like a man in a dress, you know. But what is wrong with what he's wearing? I think he looks really cool. He doesn't look gay. I think he looks really comfortable. His clothes are comfortable, the loose fitting, the baggy's got room there. I mean, what is wrong with that? Oh, but he should have this, instead he should be wearing this, you know, really tight fitting collar around his neck and a tie and a suit, and everybody be saying how smart he looks. And this is what I mean about indoctrination. Indoctrinating the human brain with gender constructs so that when you see something out of the normal, you know, suddenly, you know, because like really he should look like him, shouldn't he, like Day and Night Ken, and his partner should look like her, ideally not like her. Okay, so you know, this is the ridiculous world that we are living in and that we're raising our children in. And then, so, you know, he looks really odd and strange, doesn't he, to people, because he isn't wearing what he's supposed to be wearing. And so, you know, now I've explained all this, I hope people do understand, and I hope National Geographic understand the situation, because it seems to me that this world and the people with most power in this world and most influence just do not have a clue what a child is. And I know what a child is because I had to rescue my inner child as part of my survival from child abuse. And I grew up with 6 younger brothers and sisters. I have a very deep and close experience with children. I've got a child of my own. I've got lots of nieces and nephews. I know children, and I just know that just because a child wants to wear girls' clothing, that does not mean that that child is transgender. It means the child is cross-dressing. The child may become transgender once they reach teenagers and they start to develop sexually and they think, yeah, I do want to be a boy or a girl. But I think that point here, you know, that this is the main point, that physical sexual intimacy and sexual attraction are a very long way from, e.g., a child's desire to dye their hair pink and play with a dollhouse. And I think that is where we need to be at, and the adult world that is running away with this thing, and, you know, getting ready to give the child hormone blockers and all these type of things. I think this is a very, very serious issue, and it is, all of it is related entirely to the gender constructs. It's all related to the gender constructs, and as a direct result of generations being just fed absolute crap, okay, to feed their brains. Their brains have been fed on crap. And because humans' brains are fed on crap, you know, if you can disconnect a person from their own sense of self as a human being, then, you know, obviously once you've done that, of course they're going to be disconnected from the creatures of Earth, aren't they? Because they're just an ego. So I really, really hope that people pick up on this. And as I say, I'm not criticising the parents that or themselves believe that their child is transgender because he's a boy and he wants to wear girl stuff, or the girl wants to wear boy stuff. I think that we have to allow our children to do these things, you know, to explore, and that we need to abandon these gender constructs so that there aren't these stark differences between girls and boys' clothes, so that people aren't saying to the boy, no, you can't wear that, and that boys grow up with an inherent anger or deprivation, or the same for girls, or that boys are encouraged to see everything to do with girls as somehow inferior and beneath him, and that girls are being raised to feel inherently bad about themselves by all these subliminal judgments that still hang around today, that judge women very, very harshly and do deny little girls, you know, the girls know from childhood that they're being denied unconditional positive regard. In most countries of the world, women are what, like the lowest class citizens. There's no respect, they've got no rights. In some countries, women have to hide away. They're not even allowed to have a bath when they're having a period because they're considered filthy and unclean. All of these need to be eradicated. And, you know, it's just not happening because the so-called intelligent, powerful people of this world who really could make a difference are all too busy enjoying their gender constructs and the things that they can buy to enhance those gender constructs. So, you know, thank you very much for taking time to listen, and I hope that people of the world, parents especially, that you do start discussing this issue now and start talking about how we can effect change. And it's very simple changes, you know. If you're going to have flowers on girls' clothes, let's have some flowers on boys' clothes. Boys like flowers. There's nothing wrong with a boy child wearing flowers. If this child wasn't presented with such a stark difference between what boys could wear and girls could wear, would he really be being called transgender now? Okay? So we do have to lose these gender constructs, and I know a lot of them are, you know, are now they've been sort of traditionalised through well, misinterpretations of religious texts, and, you know, the religious belief that, oh, a woman's got to know her place and a man's got to know his place. You know, there's always been female warriors. Jesus was a very caring, compassionate man. He certainly did not advocate the Ken Barbie role models, and this This is a crime. This is a crime against our planet. What has been done to the albatross. Just to see the chicks just absolutely full of plastic, starved to death, belly full but hungry. And that is exactly the situation of our children in the Western world.